And it looks like we are live. Guys, give me just a second here. Got to pull the Facebook groups in as we are wont to do. Get everybody in here with the wonderful Mile High Huddle community, waiting on green check marks across all platforms. And we're good to go. Mile High. Hello, everybody in Broncos country. Welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I am your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me as per usual is my good friend and colleague. He is Mile High Huddle's senior NFL draft analyst, the one and only Erick Trickel. And Erick, obviously the big thing of the week, the big news of the week, the NFL released their schedule on Wednesday. We're going to break everything down. But before we get into that, how are you, my friend? Good evening.
Yeah, I'm doing good. I mean, we finally have gotten some nice weather up here.
Nice.
We're able to get out and, enjoy some of that. We went on a little mini vacation from last Saturday until Wednesday. So, driving back home and getting alerts about different schedule stuff and trying to get that all taken down. But it was nice to get away for a little while. But I'm glad to be back. Glad to be talking about Broncos football. Excited for some stuff that's going on with Mile High Huddle in general, and yeah, just excited to be here on another Friday night.
Yeah, it's a wonderful Friday evening here on the Mile High Huddle community. Obviously, let's see, 6 o'clock Mountain Time, but no, doing good. The weather here sucks. The wind is screaming right now. It's like 50-mile-an-hour winds. It's horrible, but I got my garden planted, so everything's dead. That's a good thing. Chickens are out of the house now. That's a good thing. We don't have to worry about that. But other than that, everything is going well here in Casa de Sanderson. Let's say hello to everybody in the chat. We got my nephew in here, Justin Rounds, saying let's go, another Friday night. Mike Naylor in the house. We got Daniel Berry Sports. We've got Zach Powers, David Youngkin. Kind of a slow chat right now. Let's get that rolling if we possibly can. But no, excited to be here with you guys to break this all down. And we're going to do a good, bad, and ugly kind of a series here and go in depth, kind of breaking down some of these Broncos opponents, breaking down by quarters, essentially the first quarter of the season, good, bad, and ugly, the whole 9 yards. And honestly, this schedule sucks for the Broncos. They have a lot of very good football teams they're going to be playing against. Erick and I were kind of talking privately, and really the only one quote bad team that the Broncos are playing this year is Carolina, and they've got those guys right in the middle of their season. But let's start off with the first 4 weeks. Obviously, you have at Seattle to open up this season. Tough place to play. You're going to be at home versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. You have at Tampa Bay and at New York to round out the first 4 weeks. Now, Erick, with that first 4 week stretch, obviously, dude, the bad thing here is 4 road games, or 3 out of 4 road games. That's a terrible start to this season, man. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's just the the road game aspects of it. It's those week 3, week 4 matchups of being on the road early morning on the East Coast, where Denver has historically done poorly. And I mean, those are 2 teams that, one of them, the Jets, they could be a really tough team. Depends on Aaron Rodgers and the defense and whatever is going on with that offense. Because I don't. Did you see the rumors about them trying to essentially replace Nathaniel Hackett without replacing Nathaniel Hackett?
Yeah, I did. That was such a juicy storyline in Broncos country for about 3 hours, where everyone was just crapping all over Nathaniel Hackett and the disaster that he was a couple of years ago. But yeah, I did see that, and it was hilarious to me.
Yeah, so who knows what they're going to be. And then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, what version of Baker Mayfield are we going to get? The one thing about both these teams, though, is they have extremely tough defenses that can get after the quarterback. They can create issues. They can create issues with their coverages. And getting them early in the season, it's going to be a test for Bo Nix. I mean, all 4 of these front teams, one thing you could say about them, they'll probably have really good defenses this year. I wouldn't be surprised if all 4 of these teams end up in the top 10 defenses for this season. That is a early test for the expected rookie quarterback or the expecting starting rookie quarterback of Bo Nix.
Yeah, well, and whether it's Bo Nix or if it's Zach Wilson who does start the season, I'm not going to. I want to live in this alternate reality for a minute here, because I do think that Bo Nix is going to be handed the starting job in training camp. He's going to be given every opportunity to prove that he is the guy. If he doesn't, though, you still have Zach Wilson that's coming in. And with 33 career starts underneath his wing, he hasn't shown a whole lot. He's been very inconsistent. Now, granted, there's some coaching aspects that go on with that up in New York, but at the same time, inconsistencies processing the field, inconsistencies with his play within the pocket, not being able to really identify where he's supposed to go with the football, making critical mental errors. There's issues here. And when let's break it down here game by game. When you go up to the Pacific Northwest up in Seattle, you've got a great defense with a great defensive line. You've got Mike McDonald, who was formerly the defensive coordinator, I believe, of the Baltimore Ravens, was then also with the Michigan Wolverines under Jim Harbaugh for a couple of years there as well. He's on the fast track in terms of creating great defensive schemes. And that defensive line, man, there's a lot of depth there. They've got some horses. That secondary also has a lot of key pieces in there as well. Like, this is a tough matchup, man.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we were talking about before we went live, as you said, is this Seattle Seahawks team, it's all going to ride on what they get out of Geno Smith, because even on the offensive side of the ball, they have a really solid roster. Some points where you can point to is like, all right, can these guys stay healthy? Can these guys, what about the depth? Will they have a decent rotation there? Like, you can find some of those questions with Seattle, but it all comes down to the quarterback. And this is a tough game to kick off the season with a tough defense, with a head coach that's well renowned for how creative he is with his defensive looks, especially up front with those simulated pressures that he's able to dial up. That's what made the Ravens defense so elite last year. So yeah, it's tough. I mean, but I would say that one of the good things about this is we get the rematch with Russell Wilson out of the way early.
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right. That's the week 2 matchup. Obviously, Denver is going to be hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. The news coming out of that, I'm not going to break anything right now unless somebody mentions it in the chat. But that's going to be a really fun matchup for this Broncos team. And again, let's go to this defensive side of the football for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, TJ Watt, probably the best pass rusher in the NFL. You could argue for Myles Garrett, maybe Max Crosby slides into there, but TJ Watt has been one of the most consistent defensive players in terms of getting after the quarterback, going against Mike McGlinchey. That the rest of that defense is solid. They've added a couple of key pieces in the secondary. It might actually add another one here soon if some of the rumors about Justin Simmons I've seen in the past about 2 months or so have been true. Like, this defense is another scary unit for this Broncos offense. And again, like, you got the rookie quarterback, you've got Zach Wilson. Like, what's the key to beating this Pittsburgh Steelers team right now? You better control the ball offensively and keep the ball out of Russell Wilson's hands.
No, put the ball in Russell Wilson's hands.
Well, against our defense, though, against the Denver Broncos defense,
put pressure on him to go out there and make plays. Let him get inside his own head. Like,
what do you think
that mistake to happen?
What do you think that environment's going to be like?
It's going to be tough. Like, it's going to be tough. But we got to say hello to some people in the chat real quick. Don't worry, Lance, I'll get this. We don't have Scott with us at the moment. He will be joining a little bit later. But we have Phil McLaughlin coming in, saying, good evening, Lance, Eric, and Deacon Scott. Scary schedule and terrible time for bye week. Could be a 1-5 start. Hashtag Buckham. Hashtag MHH for life. Hashtag BFL. Broncos for life? Is that BFL?
Yep.
Okay. Had a brain fart there. But yeah, I mean, it could be a 1-5 start. The first few games, it's tough. MLA, I'm worried about our defense. We've got David Yankee coming in. I think this matchup with Russ is more on Russ than Bo or Sean. I don't think they really care like Russ does. I'm sure Bo doesn't really care. I mean, he wasn't in the league when, wasn't here with Wilson or anything. But there is some, pressure there with Sean to sit there and go and show that, hey, it was the quarterback last year more so than the coaching staff. And then it's very possible Pittsburgh Steelers could have 3 rookies starting on their offensive line. I know definitely 2 will start. I actually just had it pulled up, and I'm going to go back and pull it back up again. But yeah, I mean, they definitely went and made some significant changes to their offensive line. But the thing is offensive line is one of the easier positions to transition for college players in the NFL. Zach Frazier, I mean, he's been praised for it. Troy Fautanu at left tackle, he's the expected starter. Like, those are the guys that, and then Isaac Suamalo that they brought in. James Daniels is a decent enough right guard. Maybe Mason McCormick can beat him out and have 3 rookies. And then Broderick Jones, he really came on late last season.
He did.
They targeted the key areas that were weaknesses on this offensive line and have made significant improvements with it, and did so early on in the draft and in free agency. So this offensive line, it can be tough, but fortunately the Broncos, they upgraded their defensive line and defensive front a little bit that they can help and go hold their own against them a little bit.
I think the big thing here with that Pittsburgh Steelers defense, and maybe it's not necessarily Sean Payton, but what does Vance Joseph do with that defensive front to try to create a bunch of confusion up front for Russell Wilson? Like we already saw it over the last couple of seasons with Russ in terms of not being able to properly diagnose where he was supposed to go with the football, not playing with timing. Can Vance Joseph really kind of dial up some more creative looks in that back end of that secondary, especially given the addition? I mean, you go out, you add Levi Wallace, a former Pittsburgh Steeler, obviously. You bring in Chris Abrams-Drain. You're hoping Damari Mathis is going to take a step forward after the step back that he took this last season. Obviously, Surtain is there. The safety room of this team is kind of in shambles right now. We'll see how that all plays out. But there's enough versatility with a lot of these players that you can get pretty creative. Do you think that Vance Joseph can kind of dial up some exotic looks against Russell Wilson to confuse him and force him into some like big time mistakes?
Can he? Sure. Will he? I have no idea. And then going back to this real quick, let's get ready to Dominic DB4L respond about how offensive linemen can transition. Says not into games, they're not going to adapt that quickly, especially when they're getting drafted in the 20s, in the second round, and the fourth round. Troy Fautanu is a starter. Zach Frazier, he's going to be starting at center. Zach Frazier was many believed to be a first rounder, broke his leg late in the season, crawled off the field so his team could win. But yeah, even into games, some of the best offensive linemen over the last few years have been rookies. And it's consistently. So yeah, offensive line, it's one of the easiest positions to transition to into games.
Yep.
And, having training camp and preseason, that's what helps them along. There's not a lot that they have to adapt to. And especially when you're going against the defensive front that the Steelers have with the talent they have, that'll help you bring you around even quicker. And then Christian Parker's, I predict Rodgers gets 50 yards rushing touchdown against our defense. Jay Roper, how do Broncos get to 10 wins? What has to go right with the team? What draft picks show out? I think this is a very good question.
It is. I was going to grab this in a second.
Yep. I am not sure how they get to 10 wins. I don't want to do a record prediction, but I have a hard time seeing more than 6 or 7 wins on the schedule. Mm-hmm. And that's being generous with it. Obviously, it is super early to be able to tell. No idea what's going to happen even between now and the start of the season. It's early September. So a lot can still change. But as it stands right now, I have a hard time seeing more than 6, 7 wins.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. 6, 7 wins is probably on the optimistic side for me. I'm thinking 4 or 5 wins right now. This roster, Nick Kendall actually brought this up on Twitter, our buddy in Boo, Iowa, but he brought it up with us in the private chat as well. What position on this roster right now is better than it was last year? Outside of the defensive line, I can't think of necessarily one. I mean, you move on from Jerry Jeudy, you replace him with Troy Franklin. How does that situation work out? So wide receiver, you could maybe.
They're not replacing Jerry Jeudy with.
Exactly, and that's that was a blanket statement. Troy Franklin. Yeah, that was more of a blanket statement than anything, not like a one-for-one comparison. So you move on from Jerry Jeudy, you bring in Troy Franklin, you maybe get Tim Patrick back, and hopefully he can play, and we just don't really know. But the offensive line, you lose Lloyd Cushenberry, you downgrade to Sam Mustipher, you don't know what Alex Forsyth is. The rest of the offensive line kind of stays the same. So is it better? No. Is it the same? Sure, maybe. Downgrade at the center position. The running back, you add Audric Estime, but what does that whole room kind of look like? Is that better than what you had last year? Given if they want to move on from Javonte Williams, maybe do they want to move on from Samaje Perine? How does Jaleel McLaughlin fit into this whole thing? The defensive line is really the one place because you lose Josie Jewell at linebacker. Sure, you get Jonas Griffith back, but practice squad player. Injuries are a big concern there. Cornerback, maybe an improvement over Fabian Moreau with Levi Wallace, but it's pretty well status quo. And then the back end of your secondary is still rough as well. Losing Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson. Like I know Kareem with his bad hits and everything was a not necessarily a loss there, but you don't have that veteran leadership on the backside now. You have PJ Locke and Caden Stearns who can't stay healthy. So what position on this team has improved to get you to 10 wins? It's not necessarily there. What has to go right with the team, though, the first and foremost, and what draft picks need to show out, first and foremost, your number 12 overall pick, Bo Nix, needs to go right. Like, you absolutely have to have hit on Bo Nix, and he has to show capability of being a quality starting quarterback immediately. The other draft pick that I think really needs to show out is one I kind of didn't really bag on, but didn't really give him the props that he deserves here, is Audric Estime. If you're going to go into this season and have success, you need to ease the transition for Bo Nix, and you need to lean on a quality running game. And that's a big need for this team, to lean into that running game and help Bo Nix out as much as they possibly can. Estime has to be a big part of that.
Yeah, definitely. And then we got a pretty good question here from Sammy McCurdy. Do you think Nix gets more reps in preseason if he beats out Zach and Stidham? I think the whole competition between the three quarterbacks is a farce. And I think it's going to be pretty clear early on that Bo Nix is going to get the majority of the reps.
Yep. Yeah, I'm right there with you on that one. Like I said, I think that Bo Nix is going to be named the starting quarterback early unless it's absolutely blatantly obvious that he is not capable of doing this job. And then it's probably going to be Zach Wilson. But I'm not going to live in that. I mean, there's definitely a reality there, but it's not something that I'm willing to secede right now, given the situation at hand.
If Bo Nix is not the starting quarterback, something went really, really wrong. As in, he got hurt. Yep. That is the only way Nix is not starting.
Yeah,
period.
I'm right there. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Our guy DVA jumping in here, moderating the chat, saying Nix is starting. If it's not Bo Nix, not only did something wrong happen with him, the process to getting him into Denver was also wrong. Like, he either, this is going to sound terrible, and I hate the way that it's going to sound. If he doesn't start, he's either injured or something dramatically went wrong with the scouting evaluation of Bo Nix in general. Like, plain and simple. That's at least my opinion. I don't want to say it's a fact, but it's at least my opinion on that.
Todd, I'm not sure what your question is there about. Seriously, what do you want? You want the Judy Cancer or Troy Franklin? I don't think either of us were saying that we want Judy. So I'm not exactly sure where your question's coming from here.
Maybe you missed something else in the chat.
Yeah. But getting to the next 4 games here, we have back-to-back home games to kick it off with the Raiders and the Chargers, then on the road for that Thursday night football game with the Saints, and then back home against Carolina, who is easily the worst team that the Broncos have to play. They have done very little to actually upgrade that team. I don't see much good here. Like, at this point, the Chargers are probably figuring stuff out and with their offense and everything like that, and getting their running game really going and figured out with Harbaugh there. Like, I know there's a lot of jokes about them, about their issues staying healthy, which are all valid, but man, Harbaugh just consistently during his time with San Francisco and then with the Wolverines had one of the healthier teams pretty consistently in their respective leagues. The Raiders, man, they added some talent in key areas. They're betting on a lot of younger guys stepping up. Not sure what we're going to get out of them. New Orleans on a short week after a divisional game, that's tough. Especially with a lot of the focus there being on Sean Payton's return. This isn't nearly as difficult as the first 4 weeks, but it's not a cakewalk either. It's not super easy.
Yeah. Let's grab this from Michael really fast. I saw it earlier and forgot to grab it, but Michael Ronquillo jumping in on Facebook, as he is wont to do, throwing some stars around. Good evening, Lance and Eric on the Dove Valley Deep Divers. Go Broncos. Go Michael. We also have our guy Peter Middleton over there in Singapore jumping in, saying good morning from Singapore, Dove Valley Deep Divers. Good morning, Peter. It's good to see you as well. It's always great to see your face in here on a wonderful Friday evening. Back to that schedule, though. Eric, I think the one good thing that I can see out of this, I've got 2 good things, but the one big one is it comes out of the ugly from the schedule overall with the week 14 bye that the Broncos have. They're at least going to get a mini bye week in week 7. You're going to get a 10-day rest period because you go to New Orleans as Sean Payton returns back to the team that really made his name in the NFL. You go to New Orleans Thursday, October 17th. You get a 10-day mini bye week in the middle of your season, which kind of at least a little bit alleviates the full bye week that you get 7 weeks later from that. And then the other thing is you started the season off 3 out of 4 games on the road, guys. Like that's a tough haul, especially with those 2 early day games, September 22nd at Tampa Bay, September 29th at New York. Those 2 start times are terrible for the Broncos, especially playing in Florida in early September. Like Denver never does well there. But you got home versus the Raiders, you got home versus the Chargers, at New Orleans, and then at home against Carolina. This is still a tough stretch because you have the Raiders, you have the Chargers, 2 division rivals, but at least you're playing within the friendly confines of Empower Field at Mile High 3 out of the 4 next weeks with a mini bye week in there. I'll take that as a positive.
Yeah, it's always nice to get that little bit of a break there. The issue, this is going to sound a little bit messed up here, and I'm not trying to overlook the Panthers whatsoever. I would prefer to have that mini bye week before a tougher opponent, but it is what it is. Peter Middleton coming in and asking, when is the last possible bye week? Is it week 14? Yes. The range is week 5 to week 14, I believe.
And I heard some interesting commentary from Tyler Columbus on the radio the other day talking about what bye week is worse. Which one is the worst bye week? If you had to rank, them, the week 5 bye week where you have it early in the season, or week 14 where you have to go through the majority of the season before you get there. Denver probably got the second worst bye week that you could possibly get on an NFL schedule because you have to go through that entire first 13 weeks of the season to get there. You're going to arrive at that point beaten, battered, and bruised. And for a team that don't want to say lacks talent, but lacks depth and overall top talent, it's going to hurt a lot.
Yeah, and especially the big question is, I mean, I wouldn't say Denver was super lucky on the injury side of it last year, but they were at certain key positions, primarily the offensive line.
Yep.
Oh man, having that late bye week, you're really having to hope that you keep that luck there on the offensive line, especially because they did not do much to add to this room. Yeah, and the offensive line is still pretty concerning.
Yeah.
Especially with we actually have a pretty good question here from Jay Roper. What does Bo Nix have to do to impress you this season? What does he have to do to impress you, Lance?
I want to see competency within the offense. And I know that sounds very vague, but at the same time, it is also very specific because this offense is predicated in the passing game on timing, accuracy, and precision. And those are things that Bo really worked with well at Oregon. I want to see that translate to the next level where he's hitting his back foot, getting the ball out right as he processes everything pre and post snap, putting it accurately onto his receivers and allowing them to go and make plays for him. I don't care about the stat line this year. I want to see if he can actually handle what it looks like to operate an NFL offense going against higher quality defensive talent at the NFL level, and if he can actually be a quality starting quarterback. Do I think that he needs to show top 7 level ability right now? Absolutely not. I'm not expecting him to be CJ Stroud. What I am expecting him is to be at least competent enough in the offense where it doesn't look lagging at every turn and step along the way. That's my big expectation for Bo Nix right
now. There's a lot. I mean, you want to see consistent progress, you want to see growth, you want to see consistent development. The simplest way I can put it is he needs to be by the end of the season, he needs to be undoubtedly a top 16 quarterback in the NFL.
That's fair.
I think that's more than fair. He was the 12th overall pick. I mean, there's a lot of bad quarterbacks out there. Being top 16 is not difficult. To me, looking at it right now, like there's not much, not a lot of tough competition there for him to reach that point. But yeah, he's got to be at least a top 16. And then next year we got to see him be pushing, top 12, top 10.
What does that look like to you? Like if you had to describe what that looks like to you in terms of what we see on the field on a down in and down out, game in, game out basis, what does that look like to you to be a top 16 quarterback in the NFL right now?
I mean, just a lot of different things. It's the reason why I said that top 16 quarterback is a simple way of putting it. is it's a mixture of different statistics. Obviously, like a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, up there in yards, lower in turnover worthy play rate, things like that. It's a mixture of statistics that would make him unquestionably a top 16 quarterback.
Yeah, the turnover worthy plays I think is a big one here. And again, I'm going to go back to kind of what I was talking about more in depth description here. Operating the offense at an efficient level. And who was it? We just saw that here as well. Mike Naylor jumps in. Run the offense efficiently. Whether that is like, I'm not looking for explosive plays. I want you to get this offense on time, in rhythm. And if you get 3 or 4 really quality scoring drives, whether they're touchdown drives or getting close to the red zone and getting this offense on schedule is the big thing for me. And if you do all those things, again, you're not turning the football over, getting the 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, just being efficient on third down is another big one. Keeping the offense on the field, that's going to be a big step in the right direction for the development of Bo Nix, and at least in my opinion. Let's see. We got Michael Ronquillo saying Bo Nix is going to have bumps in the NFL. I don't disagree with that. It's obvious that rookie quarterbacks do have bumps. You want to see them limit those bumps as much as humanly possible. But yes, he's going to have bumps here. Let's see here. There was a couple other ones I wanted to grab as well. Zach Power jumping in saying, I hope to see Nix be better than guys like Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, and Daniel Jones. 2 of those guys I definitely want to see. I like Baker a little bit more than most people do, but I would like him to see better play than Geno Smith or Daniel Jones. What do you think of that, Eric? That's about the right range.
Seeing him comparable to Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield is fine. Gabe Engvold comes in saying 16 is asking a lot. Not really. It's not asking a lot out of him at all. Basically, look, using Pro Football Focus here with a minimum of 300 dropbacks to get 16, that's 21 touchdowns. I saw you earlier mention touchdowns. 21 touchdowns. That's what we're looking at. Completing about 65% of his passes. Like throwing, let's see here. For fewest interceptions, throwing 10, 11 interceptions. So 22 and 21 and 10 or 22 and 11 or whatever. That's doable for somebody like Bo Nix in this offense. It's not asking a lot. Yeah. It's even from a rookie. Like it's pretty, what the minimum you should be asking for really when you look at when you're looking at a rookie quarterback, Yeah. 21, 22 touchdowns, 9 to 11 interceptions, yards. Oh man, yards 30, 35 to 39, 35 to 4, like 3.5 to 4,000.
That might be a stretch for me on that one because you're asking a rookie quarterback to average over 200 yards a game, and I don't know that that's.
You want to know what the number 16th in yardage was last year?
What's that?
3,624.
Okay, well then you better Smith. Be able. Yeah, what? There you go. You know what? That's a good point. I'm glad you came with the statistics there because I was about to say not something stupid, but at the same time, I think verified. Let's see. Not verified. Valid is the point. The word I'm looking for. You're asking a rookie quarterback to come in with the situation surrounding him right now, and asking 17 games, 200 yards, 3,400. Right? You're asking a rookie quarterback to come in and average 200 passing yards a game. That might be a little bit lofty. That's the one thing that where I'll say, yeah, I don't necessarily expect you to throw for 200 yards a game on average. That's pretty good. If you can get 20 touchdown passes and 10 interceptions, I will expect that should be the expectation, but to throw for 34, 35, 3,600 yards, that's pretty lofty for a rookie quarterback given the situation around him. So I don't know. Am I off base on that?
3,500 yards is pretty standard.
Okay. But
that's about the baseline of what you're looking for.
I guess I'm going on like the baseline average per game, 200 yards per game. You might have a game where you go off for 350 and then have one where you struggle for like 120. Like it's going to happen. We're going to see the ups and downs. Regardless, let's get back to this schedule here. It's a good transition point. Obviously, week 8 is the game against Carolina. This next 4-game stretch, guys, absolutely brutal because you go back on the road. And the first week 9, November 3rd, you go to Baltimore, and then you follow that up going to Kansas City the teams that just played in the AFC Championship game last season. Obviously, the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl. Then you have a home game against Atlanta, who has Kirk Cousins and a massive plethora of weapons with that Atlanta Falcons offense. And then you go on the road to Las Vegas to play the Raiders, man. This stretch is probably, for me, the ugliest stretch on this schedule because you have those two elite teams leading off the first 2-game stretch of that, man.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very tough stretch. I probably wouldn't disagree that this being, the toughest, section of it, toughest quarter. Early road game to the East Coast, early road game to Kansas City, at home versus Atlanta, which has done a lot to try to turn things around with the exception of the draft class. And then on the road against the Raiders, where we haven't beaten them yet in the new stadium. And, divisional game always adds a little bit more toughness to it. 3 out of 4 on the road. This is a tough break. And then even throwing that in, since the bye week you're back home against Cleveland on Monday Night Football, and then you get your bye week.
Yep.
So you even get a day less of your bye week than a lot of teams do because you have to play on Monday. So you don't get that Monday as part of the bye week.
I didn't even notice that. That's a good observation.
Yeah. So I would putting these 5 games together, it is without a doubt the toughest segment of this Broncos schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the failures that this Broncos team had in the running game. I mean, Baltimore's going to come out. They're going to smash you in the mouth, especially at home. Again, this is an early kickoff time, 11 a.m. Mountain Time, going against one of the best running quarterbacks we've probably ever seen in the NFL. That running game is just electric. And they also have Mark Andrews at the tight end position, who is going to eat apart Alex Singleton and Cody Barton. Like, if I'm any Denver Broncos opponent this season, we're playing in 12 personnel. Get as versatile as you can with the tight ends and go at that. Go ahead.
Why are we so set on Cody Barton being the starter?
I'm not. Well, because he's an experienced
starter. That's like the third time you've mentioned Alex Singleton and Cody Barton specifically.
So the reason why I say that is because he's been I'm going to say reliable starter. Yeah. Because that's the only word that I can kind of
think. A crappy starter.
Yeah. That's why I said reliable. I'm not going to say quality starter. He's at least a guy that you can throw out there and be a starting linebacker on this team. Who's going to
his nickname. Right, his nickname is the complete opposite of somebody being reliable. Mr. Backside.
Mr. Backside. Because he's always showing his backside to the quarterback and his backside to his receivers. Like, yeah, I say reliable as a pseudo compliment, but also a shot.
My point is, he's a journeyman linebacker that's been struggling for the last 2 years. Wasn't paid a lot, paid enough to be guaranteed a starting job. Not on a lengthy contract either. Drew Sanders, we still don't know what's going on with him. Maybe Cody Barton ends up being the starter, but it is very obviously a competition there for that second starting linebacker job. Yeah. My whole point was, let's not be so certain right now that Cody Barton is that second starter.
And that's a fair point. Let's get back to that here in a second. But we got Phil McLaughlin jumping in here with a good question saying, guys, will we have 1,000-yard rusher this year? Probably not. And it's not because we don't have guys talented enough to do that, because I do think Estime is talented enough to be 1,000-yard rusher in this league. Obviously, I think Javonte Williams is a guy that's talented enough to be 1,000-yard rusher. I just think that the rotation of these guys at the running back position this year is going to essentially limit the opportunity for you to have a guy like that bell cow back. You're not going to have that this year with Pirine, with Estime, with Javonte Williams. You're not going to see a guy get 200 carries or 225 carries like that. Probably not going to be an option. So you need to have elite level production with the limited amount of touches to be able to get to 1,000 yards with this running back rotation. So no, not for me.
Yeah, I don't think we see a single 1,000-yard rusher, but I could see a lot of rushing yards combined between them. I could see a couple guys get kind of close to it, over 700-800 yards. But I just don't think that we'll be able to get over that hump, because I think that there's going to be a heavy rotation there.
Yeah, and Zach Powers jumps in saying Javonte can be 1,000-yard guy. Absolutely, I agree with this. He had 700 last year coming off of a bad injury. Yeah, and he also slowed down later towards the end of the year. You could tell the fatigue from that injury really was catching up to him later down the stretch. But like Erick said, with the rotation, like I said, with Estime, with Samaje Perine, with Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, all those guys are going to be seeing their own certain volume of touches per game. You need to have what? So 250 carries at 4 yards a carry is 1,000 yards. Do any one of these running backs get 250 this year? And again, this is on an average. Yeah, so you're asking for a guy to get like 5 yards a carry on 200 touches. That's probably not going to be in the cards, especially if Bo Nix struggles throwing the ball down the field. Where now you're going to get 8 and 9 man crowded boxes. Like it's just not going to happen.
Now, on the flip side of it, I think we can get 1,000 yards from scrimmage from a running back this year, but not 1,000 yards rushing.
Yeah. Well, I think a realistic expectation for this running back room is going to be about 1,600 yards total. 1,600 to 1,800 yards total out of this running back room should be the expectation. There's a lot to work with here. Like I'm not saying they're going to run for 2,000 yards this year. Most teams don't do that with 4 running backs in a committee. So if you can get 1,600 to 1,800 yards, by all means, absolutely, I'm here for that life.
Let's see here.
What do you got going on?
13 teams ran for at least 2,000 yards last year.
13 teams.
I think 2K is a fair assessment of rushing yards.
Okay.
Especially help he's a running back. Yeah, 13 teams. It's going up. I mean, the extra game, that boosted it up a little bit. And then there was another 2 teams that were within 100 yards of it. So not quite half the team.
How many of those teams have quarterbacks that run the football a lot? Obviously, you're going to get Mahomes, probably Lamar, Josh Allen. So Buffalo, Kansas City, and Baltimore in there. I'm guessing you're probably going to get, I would say Indy, but Anthony Richardson wasn't there. Man,
would you like me to list them for you?
Sure, go ahead.
Obviously, the Ravens were number 1, followed by the Bears. The quarterbacks.
Justin
they had 2 of the highest rushing totals, like rushing attempts on the season. 49ers, Cardinals, Lions, Dolphins, Bills, Eagles, Falcons, Colts, Rams, Browns, and Steelers.
The Browns make sense. The Steelers make sense. The Colts make sense. With Jonathan Taylor, like that all makes sense. But
and the Broncos sat at 18-10 last year.
Okay, well then what did Russell Wilson add to that? 450, 350, 450, something like that. I guess that was my overarching point here: is how much are you adding from the quarterback position in terms of rushing yards?
Yeah, you should be able to add some with Bo Nix too.
And you should be able to add some with Bo Nix. I'm not saying like if you can get 200 out of Bo Nix, you're doing probably pretty good things there, to tell you the truth.
341 yards from Russell Wilson last year.
Yeah, if you can get 200 out of Bo Nix, you're doing good things. All right, so last 4 games of this schedule, then we'll answer as many questions as we possibly can. We've got about 22 minutes, so get your guys' questions in. We'll see them all with super chats and stars and anything like that. We got Scott behind the scenes now, but any questions you guys have for us, please get them in quickly so that we can break down as much as we possibly can. But the last 4 games of this season, you are at home coming out of your bye week against the Indianapolis Colts. You go to Los Angeles to play the Chargers. And then this last 2-game stretch is, I want to say rough, but I think week 18 is going to be a little bit easier than most. But you go at Cincinnati December 29th, last game of the season. You're at home against the vaunted Kansas City Chiefs. This stretch of the schedule, I don't know what to think of Indianapolis right now. That defense was kind of humming last year. Shane Steichen did a really good job after losing Anthony Richardson early, and I want to see the growth of Richardson. But you and I were talking a little bit privately before we went live about if there was any bad teams that this Broncos team was going to be going up against next year, with the caveat of Anthony Richardson not being healthy or not taking that step as a franchise quarterback. Indianapolis is one of the few teams where I could see the Broncos stealing a win, especially off the bye week, especially at home, man.
Yeah, I mean that's a game they can win. It all depends on
Mhm.
Richardson and what Indianapolis getting out of him, but they have a pretty talented team.
Yes, they
That
do.
defense has a lot of talent throughout it, and they hum at a high level.
Mhm.
So, but on the same note, defensive play is so volatile that we don't know what we're going to get out of that defense that week. Even last year, some of the best defenses were so volatile. I mean, Denver had a historic 5-game stretch with their defense, but we're still one of the worst defenses in the NFL last year. So
Mhm.
it's such a volatile thing. But Indianapolis coming off the bye week, as you said, yeah, it is a game they can win. It all comes down to what do we get out of Anthony Richardson?
Yeah, that's the big thing, and then also you got to understand the health and effectiveness of Jonathan Taylor down the stretch. Like he's a very big and explosive, powerful running back with long speed, man. And this Broncos running defense, yeah, they went and added Jonathan and Franklin Myers, and we'll see if Ioma Wazarike is able to come back, and Matt Henningsen and the depth of this unit. This run defense against a team like that, where you have a versatile quarterback that can run with the football, likes to run with the football, turning around and handing off to a guy that's 225 pounds that runs a 4.4. Like that's a tough matchup, especially in December. Where ground games and defensive football win you games in December. So that's a tough matchup. You go to Los Angeles to go play Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers again. We'll see what that team looks like if they're banged up and injured like they always are seemingly down the stretch, but that's a tough matchup against an elite quarterback. Then you go on the road again to Cincinnati to play Joe Burrow and that passing offense, and then Kansas City at home. That might, of this 4-game stretch, that might be the most winnable game. And it's going to come with the caveat of, do the Chiefs have the number 1 seed locked up? But is their playoff positioning locked up? Because if it is, you're probably playing against who's their backup quarterback now? I know
Carson
it's
Wentz.
somebody. Carson Wentz. Thank you. So you're probably going to get up against Carson Wentz and the backups of that roster. Maybe you can steal a game at home against the Chiefs, but it's all depending on what their playoff seating looks like at that time. This is another tough stretch to close out the season for the Broncos.
Yeah, it's and the Chiefs. If they don't play their starters, that is a game that they can win out or they can win to close the season. Um, which might be worth it, might not. Draft position sometimes it matters. MLA comes in with a interesting comment. Everyone talking about Nick's fading Payton's system, but what about when Payton isn't the coach anymore? I don't know how old Payton is, but he's not super young. I know that. Well, what do you think, Lance? What about Nick's post Payton? Payton is 60 years old.
Yeah, he's 60 years old. I just looked that up. I think you're going to need to. Man, that's a tough question because we're 24 years old. We're going into a system that fits me very well. You're going to need to find somebody that's going to be able to step in and run a very similar system like that. And maybe this is the opportunity because the Broncos went out and got him after the season was over. Maybe this is the year, or this situation would be the time where Pete Carmichael would be the step in for the head coach. In that scenario, I think I'd be comfortable with it. After that, though, like that's the one scenario that I'm kind of all right with Bo Nix being the long-term future of this quarterback room. I don't know, man. I really don't know. This is such a tough question. What's your thoughts? And maybe I can bounce something around in my head really fast because that's my first thought. Is like when you move on from Sean Payton, you got to have a similar system here because you can't expect Bo Nix to go out and do something crazy.
You're getting 10 to 13 years out of Bo Nix. You can get 10 to 13 years out of Sean Payton.
You could.
Like 60 years old, that's still relatively young in the NFL. We don't have them anymore, but Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll, they were coaching into their 70s.
Yeah.
We can get that, and as long as Bo Nix hits, I expect Sean Payton to be here for the longevity of his career. If Bo Nix misses, we might see Sean Payton let go before his contract is up.
How likely do you think that that's to happen? And I'm not going to say coin flip thing. Let's.
I'm
not talking about the Bo Nix thing. I'm talking about the Sean Payton thing being let go before the end of his contract.
I have always said that he will get a minimum of 4 years, and it will depend getting the next 3 years of his, right? Yeah. This
Yeah.
year, obviously, he'll get. Next year, he'll get. And I think he'll get the year after that to try to, if Bo Nix doesn't work out, he'll get that third year to try to, start correcting things again and going from there to see if he can get year 5.
Yeah.
But I think he gets at least 4 years of his 5-year contract, and we'll see from there. But he's now tied at the hip with Bo Nix.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and I think that's a good point. If Nix hits, like that's the big thing, and I think you bring up a salient point here in terms of, I mean, look at guys like Chuck Noll. I'm not comparing Sean Payton to these guys. It's greatest coaches in NFL history, but Chuck Noll, Chuck Knox, Don Shula, Marv Levy, like those guys coached well into their 60s and 70s. Like Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, Bruce Arians. Hell, Bruce Arians retired at 69. Like, nice, but like there's longevity to there's longevity to these coaches, and you can kind of expect that. But if Bo Nix doesn't really hit, that's a big factor here. Is what is the status of Bo Nix in 2 years? If he's not the guy, then maybe we do see a case of move on. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they'll give Sean Payton at least one more shot, but a second contract is definitely riding on Bo Nix. We got Michael Ronquillo jumping in here, going back to the schedule. Talking about the Broncos in terms of deserving the schedule because of being bad on holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving over the last couple of seasons. We have obviously the blowout in Los Angeles against the Rams a couple of years ago at the hands of Baker Mayfield. They had another Christmas Day game in there where they were not good, a Thanksgiving Day game a couple of years ago where they were not good. Eric, do you take anything away from the Broncos only being given 2 primetime games? Obviously, you get the one on Thursday Night Football. Every team plays on Thursday Night Football, so you're guaranteed
Not anymore.
at least the one. Oh, did they change that? Oh, that's right, they did. They did because they flexed it. They did the flexible thing. Regardless,
you're not guaranteed anymore because there's one team that doesn't have any primetime games. You no longer are guaranteed a Thursday Night Football game.
When did that happen? I
this year.
Okay. So I missed that announcement. Regardless, you got the Thursday Night Football game for the Broncos against the Saints in Week 7, and then you get that Week 13 game against the Browns. Is that in Cleveland? Yes. Or no, it's at home against Cleveland on Monday Night Football Week 13. So 2 games in primetime for Denver after you get 5 last year. I think 7 the year before with Russell Wilson. Like, is this a statement from the NFL saying that the Broncos are irrelevant, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the teams with the fewest here. Carolina Panthers have none. Then you have the Indianapolis Colts, which we don't know what they'll be. The New England Patriots, they're fall from grace. Arizona Cardinals, what are they going to be? Tennessee Titans, what are they going to be? Yeah, the NFL, they like to put exciting games, exciting matchups on prime time, which typically includes good teams. And the Broncos aren't viewed as a good team, and with good reason. And so they only get 2.
Yeah,
and it's honestly one more than I expected.
I'm surprised that the matchups that they got are not division rivals, and like that's my one big takeaway from this. You get Sean Payton going back to New Orleans. I understand that being a Thursday Night Football game, but you didn't get a Sunday night game against whether it's the Raiders, the Chiefs, or the Chargers. Like, you didn't get a divisional rivalry game in prime time. Like, that says a lot for what this Broncos team is and has been. I mean,
they're viewed as the basement dwellers in the division.
Yeah.
And if they want to fix it, they got to go out there and prove it.
Yeah, well, they've been this way for 8-9 years, damn near. We're 2024 now. They won the Super Bowl in 2016. Technically, it was 2015 year, but 2016 is when they won the Super Bowl. Like, it's been a decade that this team has been garbage, bottom dwellers of the division. And they've
always had that reason for the NFL schedule makers to be like, okay, they could be a good team.
Yep.
Case Keenum, he just coming off that one miracle year. Joe Flacco, who at the time was still highly thought of by in NFL circles. What are we doing with, Vic Fangio and the defense? And maybe he finally got his guy. And like, there's always been these reasons for it. Well, not now.
Yep.
Like, we got the one game that I was expecting was the Sean Payton returning home. That was the one primetime game. And I'm surprised we got another one. And I'm surprised it's against the Cleveland Browns of all teams. Like,
That's got to be some kind of scheduling conflict where they couldn't find anybody else to put in that particular time slot.
yeah, because that
Like,
is one thing that they also have to do is like whenever they have concerts or they share
yeah,
stadiums, they have to work around all of that too. So I don't
yeah.
envy schedule makers.
No, absolutely not. Did you hear the whole like the NFL revolved their scheduling around the Taylor Swift Eras tour? Did you hear
Mhm.
that whole conspiracy theory? That's just nonsense, guys. Because stadiums already have her booked for that because this tour's been announced for like a year now, and they needed to work around that because those stadiums are already booked for $1 billion concert tour. Like, get over yourself, seriously. Anyways, back to the chat really fast. We got a couple minutes here. This is a good question from Zach Powers because it goes back to this Broncos roster and goes to the new kickoff rules. We had our good buddy Luke Polglaze on the live draft show. If you guys get the opportunity to go and check that out, we're talking about special teams. This is a good question, and I'd love to have Luke back on where we could do a good special teams show. And not that anyone would tune in, but it'd be fun. Zach asks, who would be your favorite returners for the Broncos in this new kickoff rules, the new kickoff deal? Eric, what do you think, man?
Oh, I know it's pretty easy to see Marvin Mims, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
his vision at times can be rough. Honestly, I would really like to see Blake Watson get a shot at it because I really like his vision. Because that's the
Mm-hmm.
big thing now. It's you got to have the burst. Obviously, you need the speed, but you really got to be able to see blocks, see the openings, find the creases, and I think that Blake Watson could do well with it.
I hope you don't say my guy because I'm going to throw a wild name at you.
I'm not sure who else I think would do well at doing it.
I don't know that he has the speed to do it, but I think that he has the vision and the ability to break tackles well enough to do it. I think Audric Estime would be a hell of an option as a kickoff returner for this team.
Hmm.
If you can scheme up some good blocking schemes and point him in the right direction, let him see it, and let him get north and south where he can get that big body just a rumbling, stumbling, bumbling down the field and get him in some open space. I think that Audric Estime could be one hell of a kickoff returner with these new rules, dude. Where in the old rules where it was more based on explosiveness and twitch and getting side to side and like creating your own space, he would not work in this. But if you can dial up some designed plays where you can get him into his own open space with a head of steam, he's got enough long speed where he can take one to the house if you need to. But if you're looking for 15 to 20 yards and just a guy that's going to go beat the hell out of somebody, put his head down and fall forward for you, Estime makes a lot of sense to me, dude. And he's got the vision to make it work. What do you think on that? Like, that's my hot take. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I don't think he's got the burst or the speed enough to do it because you still have to have it.
You do still have to have it.
You have to get the ball and you still have to have the burst to get upfield quickly and actually take effect of the blockers. And I just don't think he does in that situation. As a running back, yeah, sure. But with the new rules with the kickoffs, it's not necessarily a different kind of burst, but a little bit more sustained burst that he just doesn't have.
And that's a good point. I don't know, dude. I like the idea behind it though. Especially if you get him kind of clogged up, a little shorter kickoff, get him behind there and let him just kind of go to work. I think that he could probably make it work. We got the Ronk jumping in here, Michael Ronquillo to close the show out here. Great show tonight, Lance and Eric on Dove Valley Deep Divers. Go Broncos. Go Michael. Go everybody who joined us today. Obviously, you've got Zach Powers, Gabe Engvald, Rodney Garcia, William Catalano, Phil McLaughlin jumping in here a couple different times. Let's see here. MLA, good questions. Rodney Garcia, DVA behind the scenes running the ones and twos. We have Scott behind the scenes now helping us out as well. Thank you all for joining us here on a wonderful Friday evening. We definitely appreciate your guys' love and support. And Eric, let's close the show out here in a minute. Any last words that you have? Any questions you want to grab?
Yep. We have one comment here, and I know we both didn't want to do it, but record prediction.
Do I have to?
Yeah. I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to ask you unless we got a comment. We happen to get a comment on it. It's still very early in the season. A lot can still change. I think 6 wins. We're lucky to get 6 wins.
All right. Let me just run through the schedule. This is going to be quick. At Seattle, loss. Versus Pittsburgh, loss. At Tampa Bay, maybe a win, more than likely a loss. That's 0-3. At New York, probably a loss. Versus Las Vegas, give me a win there, 1-4. Versus Los Angeles at home, maybe a win, likely a loss, 1-5. At New Orleans, you might steal a game there, still a loss, 1-6. Versus Carolina, that's a win, 2-6. At Baltimore, at Kansas City versus Atlanta, that's 3 losses in a row, 2-9. At Vegas, lost there, 2-10. Versus Cleveland, probably a loss there as well. Then you get your bye weeks, so 2-11. Versus Indianapolis, give me a win there. At Los Angeles, the hell with it. We played well in Los Angeles and always steal a game from the Chargers. There's 4. At Cincinnati, probably a loss there because Cincinnati's going to be pushing that late NFC North or AFC North playoff push. Probably a loss there. Versus Kansas City, Week 18. Give me a win there, 5-12.
Well, there you go. That's our record predictions, and we reserve the right to change it when the season gets closer.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. Obviously, like that's the cool thing. We can prognosticate our asses off and just talk football and have fun here, based off a gut feel where this roster is at right now and the schedule, the way it lines up. I'm not looking too optimistic for this team, and I really need to see a big step out of Bo Nix right out the gate. I need to see better coaching from Sean Payton in terms of making this team work with the talent that he absolutely has right now, because you can't change it anymore for the most part. 5 wins is lofty to me. I gave you 2 wins, maybe. It's the Kansas City Chiefs and the Indianapolis Colts. Maybe you win those games. 3 to 5 wins is really where I'm at.
All right. Well,
I didn't want to do that, by the way. I didn't want to do that. Like I feel bad for doing that because we've already got a reputation of being overly negative and stuff like that, which is not necessarily the truth. But that's just how I feel about it right now. Being real with you, being honest, being open with my opinions. That's how I feel about this team right now. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So we did get it. Apparently Chad and Zach did announce it. Week 2 Steelers. That's the meet and greet week. I know both Lance and I are looking into going. I have some stuff that I might not be able to. But yeah, I hope you guys can make it there for that. It'll add even more to it. And hey, we're undefeated during the meet and greet weeks. So let's see if we can squeak out another win and keep that streak going.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We're undefeated with the Mile High Huddle meet and greet week 2 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to announce that or if it had been announced already. I am really looking at being able to go this year. Financially, got to figure that out. But if I can't go to the game, at least I will be more than likely at the meet and greet for that week 2 visit from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Looking forward to that. Let's have some fun, guys, as we always do with the Mile High Huddle meet and greet. And as we always do here on a wonderful Friday evening, thank you all for joining us here this evening. You all can follow us on Twitter by finding me at LanceS_MHH, for Erick at Erick Trickel, also for Scott behind the scenes running the 1 and 2s. Thanks, Scott, for joining us. At Scout Kennedy, also for while you're at it, guys, make sure you're following at Mile High Huddle. That is the mother account where you find breaking news and analysis, anything regarding your Denver Broncos, film breakdowns, opinion articles. You find it all there at Mile High Huddle. Facebook supporters, go to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. Keep the conversation going over there on Facebook. If you guys are financially able to do so, go to mhhmerch.com and get one of these cool hats. We got lots of t-shirts, got anything for the guys, anything for the gals, something to suit your fancy. You can find it at mhhmerch.com. And if you guys are not financially able to do so in terms of throwing super chats, stars, donations, buying the merch, whatever, it does not matter. We appreciate your love and support regardless, but help us out any way you possibly can. These 3 things are a great way to do so. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle across all of your social media platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Spree. It does not matter. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle. Like every video and article you guys see on those platforms. And if you love them, please share them, because without your guys' support, we could not do what we do best, which is cover your Denver Broncos. Anything else from you, Erick?
No, thank you all for joining in. We'll see you next week. And we're 1 week closer to Broncos football again. We're getting there. Still a long ways to go, though.
Scheduling notes here, guys. We're going to be doing a pseudo 53-man roster breakdown, at least is what it looks like right now, starting with the defense next week. Defense first.
Offense.
Are we doing offense first? I wanted
Offense.
to do I wanted to do defense.
It's always
Damn it.
offense, defense, man. You know this.
I want to talk defense. Please, can we stop talking about the offense for one time? Anyways, regardless, doing a 53-man roster breakdown over 2 episodes the next couple of weeks. You all stay safe and take care. Have a great rest of your weekend. For Erick Trickel, I am Lance Sanderson. We will see you guys same time, same place next weekend. As always, go Broncos.